Greetings. Welcome. Welcome to Spiritual Warriorship. I hope and pray all of you are well and this evening's class finds you well and all of your friends and family well. We are going on a new adventure. Tonight we're going to a new chapter. I always get excited when I'm getting ready for something new, and when I read this today, it was like, oh my gosh, and I'm even more excited to get into it. But first, if there's anybody here for the first time or just coming on, I say welcome to you. And any of our regulars, double welcome. We are reading and discussing from books by His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Swami, his spiritual warrior books presently, although he has a number of other books. We are presently reading from Spiritual Warrior 3, subtitled Solace for the Heart in Difficult Times. And this evening I hope to begin in Chapter 9, Guidelines for Responsible Action. Guidelines for Responsible Action. Chapter 9 in Spiritual Warrior 3. Now first, I'm kind of happy to continue in Spiritual Warrior 3. I feel I'm giving all of you a chance who have not as yet gotten a copy of the book. How about that for advertising? And as I've said, you can get the book at Krishna.com store, or you can go to harinamapress.org. And there, I believe they may still be offering a free gift if you order a book or sign up to go on their mailing list or what have you. So you might try it, because there you see all of the books, and you can even read excerpts from any one of them. So do try to get a copy of, I'd like to say all, but this particular book we're reading from. It would be nice if we could read together, or you hear something you can go back and check, because I find I don't hold on to too much for too long. And why I'm feeling some excitement about this particular chapter, because somewhere in my mind I know there's also in another Spiritual Warrior book a chapter, I believe, called on enthusiasm. And maybe that'll be where we'll go after this. I'm not quite sure. But what was our last chapter? Or asking questions and trying to get answers. But we just finished and concluded last week the chapter on how to strengthen yourself. But before I even go there, let's do a quick look at our spiritual warriorship concept. Bhaktitirtha Swami presented this concept to us, doesn't matter, some time ago when he put these books together. He was giving the lectures, and these are the transcribed lectures in the books. But the concept of spiritual warriorship was presented to help us to become grounded in understanding who we really are as spiritual beings. It's one of the reasons, grounded in knowing who we really are. And that's the knowledge, as we get to know who we are and who we're connected to and our relationship with God and each other. And it's also to help us cope with life in trying times. And I'm sure it's some trying times for everybody these days. But if you have tools and technologies to cope. And it's also presented to help us use spiritual weapons to battle that tide of depression and anxiety and really feeling of hopelessness that's going on in our society. And also to develop an internal positive dialogue, for making the mind your best friend. Now, he reminded us, and we went through this before, but it's good to remember that spiritual warriors are not the conventional type of warrior. We're saying spiritual warriors are unconventional. Spiritual warriors do not fight with conventional weapons. Spiritual warriors do not fight on conventional battlegrounds. And spiritual warriors do not fight for conventional objectives. So then, what are the weapons? What's the battleground? What are the objectives? He tells us again, he describes nicely in the same Spiritual Warrior 3 that the true spiritual warrior strives to master the weapons. Now we asked what are unconventional weapons. Weapons of love. Weapons of humility. Compassion. Faith. And self-knowledge. Those are qualities. And we have 12 qualities of a spiritual warrior that we did study some time ago. And you can find also in the Spiritual Warrior 3 book. Now the battleground is not a conventional battleground. The battleground is the realm of consciousness. Human consciousness. And there, what do we do in consciousness? That's where the changes come about. There we have to wage war against lust and envy and ignorance that pervades human society like an occupying army. We have work to do. Now, what's the objective? The objective is to have a society, a civilization, where people live in harmony with each other and with God. Now, how do we do that? To do that, we must develop our own consciousness and ourselves, and then share our understanding with others and the people we meet in our family and friends. And that way you can give them the tools that they need to discover and experience the truth of themselves. So there's quite a bit of work for a spiritual warrior. Now he reminds us that the path of the spiritual warrior is not an easy path. It demands courage, determination, discipline, intense compassion, and unconditional love. It requires an understanding that this world is not the final chapter. I'm sure you've heard the expression, this world is not our home. So we're on a mission. And I hope those of you who come regularly or are here tonight want to join the ranks of this transcendental army. And as we hear and discuss and imbibe what we're getting and put it to practice in our lives, then we can really declare ourselves engaged in higher consciousness. Okay. And we, of course, are getting the techniques and methods in order to do that. And that was another reason why, after going through how to strengthen ourselves, I felt that, because that was a guidebook, I called it. And now we're getting guidelines. I thought I would go through some of what we addressed in how to strengthen ourselves But if I recall, last week there were very few questions. And so maybe you're getting it, you're understanding it, because we covered quite a bit. Just to give a hint, give a reminder quickly. What did we address? The challenges of spiritual life, right? And once we do commit to spiritual life, what happens? We get a lot of difficulty seems to arise. But we're told that those challenges, they serve as qualifying tests. And we need the test to see if we're ready to advance. It's just like school. You don't go ahead until you pass the final exam. So if you're serious about your spiritual life, and he even gave examples of great teachers who went through tests. So who are we that we shouldn't go? But if we persevere, we can move along. And how do we grow? We grow spiritually. What do we do with that spiritual growth? We want to help others. But before we can help others, we have to help ourselves. We must work on our own consciousness. And we must take serious inventory of what's going on within us so that we can root out any obstacles, huh? And what happens when you're rooting out, you're going to find weeds. And what weeds sabotage our devotion? He tells us that the most venomous weeds for spiritual warriors to be aware of that take root in the heart is the attachment to name, fame, and envy. So it's not about being important. If we know who we are, we'll know that we're servants of God. So we must take good inventory and see what's going on there. And that was when we had the good example of the Gandhisha temple, Lord Chaitanya cleaning to the very last straw. So if you think you did a little cleansing, go back and check again. Or you can see what's going on in your life and how things are manifesting, and you'll have an idea if you rooted it all out, pulled out all the weeds. And he reminded us of our self-protection. We must be vigilant about our minds at all times, what we're thinking, what our thoughts are, what our actions are. And then we can purify our consciousness and have the what's the word? Discrimination. He talks about the value of discernment. But a spiritual warrior must learn discrimination and not have a herd mentality rather than following the crowd. The spiritual warrior is a leader and leads the herd, and be ready to resist the lower energies and lower urges. Spiritual warriors are strong. And remember how he told us that normal is not natural. So we have to constantly examine the ramifications of our thoughts and actions. And one of the areas to discriminate and be careful with is sound vibrations. To stop the gossipy stuff going on, useless nonsense talk, or spending so much time in front of TV or listening to noisy kind of music. It can really throw off our energy. And as we're moving towards advancing spiritually, he also revealed to us the dark night of the soul, the symptoms of the dark night of the soul, which can be pretty frightening when we're going through. But if we are looking at these different truths and qualities that are being given to us, then we can know that at those moments of feeling desperate, lonely, and like no one cares what the heck's going on in my life, we can realize as a spiritual warrior that it's a moment of opportunity. It can also be a moment of danger, because if we get caught up in, oh my God, what's happening, and you sink down, then you got to start all over again. But if you see it as an opportunity, I'm really in pain and really there's a symptom, but I want to go on, you will know that the Lord doesn't give you more than you can bear, and that you are secure in the Supreme. And it's just a moment, again, as we said, of purifying your consciousness and working on yourself. And as we do that, we then choose a path to follow with care. And if that path will help you to develop love of God through devotional service, then you know you're on an appropriate kind of path. And then when we get that on that path, we make a commitment. And commitment, some people are afraid of commitments, but if you're in the spiritual life, on the spiritual warrior trend, so to speak, then you just be honest with yourself, examine yourself, and discover how serious you are about your spiritual life. And when you do that, the Lord in the heart is, and Lord is everywhere, always available, will encourage you and support you. And one of the ways we do that, we were informed in times of desperation, is to call on the names of the Lord. That all scriptures, and he had quoted in that chapter different scriptures to help us see that every bona fide scripture tells you to call the name of the Lord and how wonderful those names are. And it's a very beneficial practice in all circumstances. And then we concluded that chapter being reminded to keep our goals in mind, to pursue higher values and self-realization above everything else, because there's so much out there, the modes of nature and all, but there's so much. But if we keep that and remember that love heals, and that means connecting with the essence rather than superficiality. So when we love, we appreciate a person's true nature beyond the body. And we can see the reality of the person regardless of behavior and appearance. And I was glad I reviewed this tonight and found that in the very closure, because I've been dealing with something that this reminds me of the proper action, to see the reality of the person beyond the behavior. Because there was a behavior, God sister of mine, and I didn't like it, and I had planned to talk to her about it, and she kept distance from me. And what I found was happening, I don't know, I was feeling distance, and at some point I almost felt, well, it doesn't matter if she ever calls me, I don't care anymore, finish. But somehow I knew, as an aspiring Vaishnava, as I hope practicing spiritual warrior, following the concepts and ideas given to us by Bhakti, I couldn't stay in that. So I made the phone call. And I did speak about the behavior, how I felt about it. But what I found in all of these, as we read, they may sound simple, some may, and some may be able to. What I had to deal with, as he said, to hold on to remembering that she is a spirit being also, and has an eternal soul also, and that the behavior, yes, I didn't like, but to love. And I kept saying I love her. I've always said I love her. But it was sort of on borderline. So I'm glad to read these because they do help me in my daily growth, and I hope those who are listening are finding something there. Okay? So, we're ready to dive into our new chapter entitled Guidelines for Responsible Action. Are there any questions or comments on any statement we've made?
No.
Anybody there?
Yeah, Bhakti and Carol and Karuna Shakti.
Karuna Shakti. Okay, that sounds familiar. Okay, let's go. We are always acting. Now, as we have understood from our discussion of karma, and I hope you were here for that discussion, he went deep into that. Every action produces a corresponding reaction in the universe. One that will eventually find its way back to us. What we used to say, what goes around comes around, remember? Say it to the friends. Not knowing how deep and profound that is, but we had some sense of it. Now, an important aspect of this understanding is that by our very nature, we are always active. So we're always doing something on some level. Even if we decide to remove ourselves from society and live on a mountaintop, we will still be active to some degree. When we sleep, our consciousness remains active. Now in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna inquires about this point and what the Lord instructs him. He explains that we should devote all our activities to the development of our spiritual life, instead of trying to avoid activities and their corresponding karmic reactions. Get that? We should devote all our activities to the development of our spiritual life. Instead of what? Instead of trying to avoid activities and their corresponding karmic reactions. As we do this, even our ordinary actions of eating, working, and caring for our family begin to transcend the material platform, go above it. And why? Because we are devoting our activities to developing our spiritual life. Now today, people have a mistaken idea about spirituality, considering it to be impractical and abstract. Although it seems, really, if you're reading newspapers and with all these magazines that come out monthly free, there's a lot of talk of spirituality. I think people are realizing there has to be something better than this. So more people are talking about it. Now, naturally, many of us are intrigued by abstractions because it holds a certain mystique. But the end result of this false notion is that we have divorced spirituality from our daily lives. Like some people say they're spiritual and they make time for it, maybe once a week they may go to a temple or something like that. But he says we have faked ourselves out and performed a kind of misguided surgery, cutting out our spiritual essence and leaving a shell that gives the illusion of being the only reality. Good way to say, you're not that body. There's more to you than that body. Consequently, we do not realize that we were intended by our Maker, the Supreme Lord, to be guided by spirituality in all of our interactions. And why wouldn't we? We are His part and parcel. We have His qualities in a small amount. And He's within our heart everywhere. It tells you the Lord is in the heart. So why wouldn't we be Of course, we get caught up in what we call the three modes of material nature. He continues that we do not realize that the true measure of our spirituality is how we interact with our environment and living beings around us. The true measure of our spirituality is how we interact with our environment and living beings around us. We think that love and spirituality are sentimental feelings in the heart that make us feel good and require no commitment or action on our part. But love is a verb, and ultimately so is spirituality. If you have time to go back in the archive, when we did Spiritual Warrior 2, Transforming Lust into Love, that whole chapter on what is love is very informative and opening your eyes. You can go back and find that on Krishna.com. Now, because spirituality is not separate from everyday life, it is not what we do in church, temple, mosque, or synagogue that makes us spiritual. It is what we do everywhere. Cooking a meal and offering it with love to others can be a spiritual act. Tending a garden, nursing a baby, massaging an elder, carrying packages for a neighbor, even greeting someone with a genuine smile, or praying for someone other than ourselves. All these are acts of spirituality, if they are done as service and remembrance of God. You see how he's taking us to again, that spirituality. The knowledge is knowing who you are, know who God is, and your relationship with Him. You have a relationship, then you're connected. If you're connected, God, you know, is everywhere. He owns everything. He knows everything. So whatever you do in that remembrance of Him. And it's spiritual. That's what spiritual. He tells us that the opposites of these actions are behaviors based on total self-absorption. I, me, mine. I, me, mine. Me. And an undue obsession with our own importance, perspective, and materialistic gender. I'm recalling in this reading and studying, it's intertwined in almost every section. Caring for others, helping others, looking out for others, being selfless instead of selfish. And as once you know your connection and understand your connection, you can be that because you know you're taken care of and protected by the Supreme Lord. If we approach all of our activities from a spiritual warrior's perspective, then we will be doing our part to raise consciousness, even when confusion and negativity surround us. Spiritual warriors, you see your role is very, very important. Now, despite our idiosyncratic tendencies, propensities, and capacities we all share a common responsibility to do what we can, wherever we are, to make a difference in the collective consciousness of the planet. Spiritual warriors, are you listening? It's quite a responsibility. But if we've been taking in this tools, guidelines, and applying it in our lives, practicing it on a daily basis, we will certainly have seen change. Now he says serving is different from helping. All souls are equal creations of God, even though they may have some differences between material bodies and consciousness. All souls are equal creations of God. Now, our common perspective of helping, however, does not reflect a relationship between equals. When we help someone, we're using our own power to rescue those who are apparently of lesser strength. This is really amazing how he spells this out here. All the while accepting their frailties from our supposedly superior vantage point. I'm going to repeat that because, believe me, I've been reading through this and I'm looking at myself, and it's just a way of really looking at words that we use and maybe even motives behind it, and he's trying to help us get clearer and purer, if you will. He says that our common perception of helping, in quotes, however, does not reflect a relationship between equals. Because he's telling us serving is different from helping, and that all souls are equal creations of God. And if so, then we're all, equal on the same platform. But he says when we help someone, we're using our own power to rescue those who are apparently of lesser strength, all the while accepting their frailties from our supposedly superior vantage point. Sometimes in relationships we magnanimously tolerate others. And you've heard that, oh, I tolerate him. Meaning, quote, I recognize your existence, I accept that you are flawed, and I tolerate your flaws because I'm so wonderful. End quote. Although we may not say it, or even think it consciously, we're placing ourselves in a higher position. People feel this sense of inequality and resist it to the point that it will interfere with our ability to communicate. Have you ever reached out to help somebody? Oh, I'll help you. Let me help you. And are these subtle feelings going on? It's really made me think as I read this. And maybe you don't get the response you think you could get or should get. He tells us when we fix a person, we perceive that individual as broken and believe that their broken state requires us to act. We do not see the wholeness in the other person or trust the integrity of life within them. When we fix or help, we may inadvertently take away from people more than we give them. Our behavior implies that they do not have the resources to deal with the situation on their own. If we do things in such a dehumanizing and demeaning way, we diminish the self-esteem of others and cause damage. Even with the best intentions. I tell you, this has given me something to think about, something to be mindful of, and something to be vigilant. He uses that word quite a bit. As to what's going on in me or how I'm feeling even about myself when I offer to help. And he's going to tell us now about serving. But I just listen and think where we are, what we're getting to help us reach that higher level of consciousness in our interaction with others as we move along in life. If we do things in such a dehumanizing and demeaning way, we diminish the self-esteem of others and cause damage, even with the best of intentions. In order to be of real service, we must be attentive not only to doing the right thing, but also to doing the right thing in the right way. Otherwise, despite our efforts to improve the situation, we may unintentionally cause greater conflict and unhappiness for ourselves and others. The spiritual warrior's commitment does not stop at helping others. We must be truly selfless servants. That's the key point he's endeavoring to bring out to us. We must be selfless servants. Now he tells us that serving is different from helping or fixing. Service rests on the basic principle that life is a sacred, holy mystery. When we serve, we do so in the consciousness that we belong to life. In contrast, when we help, we see life as weak. And when we fix, we see life as broken. In either case, we see ourselves as above or separate from the wholeness of life. When we really serve, we empathize and make a sincere effort to understand what is required. Once we realize what is needed, we bring all our resources to the forefront to assist. The gesture of serving occurs between equals and originates in humility, selflessness, and love. What I'm thinking now, I remember when I was at the Institute and I answered the phone a lot. I was, I guess, the phone person. And I did answer, how may I serve you? And I guess after I didn't have that so-called position, every now and then I recall I still ask if somebody something, how can I serve you? But not as a regular basis. And I realized I never, this perspective he's giving of what could be on a subtle level, how you feel about yourself when you offer to help or go to help, is for me something to really think about deeply, because it's all about becoming, purifying our consciousness. So I hope you're hearing, as I'm hearing and trying to listen and want to put in life. Because he says, when we serve, we do not impose our power or seek anything for the separated self. We draw from all our experiences, and the wholeness in us serves the wholeness in others and the wholeness in life. In Sri Isopanishad, the invocation, Supreme Personality of Godhead is whole and complete. I should know it by heart. I'm doing that on Wednesday night, and I try to memorize that. But I can understand it since God, Supreme Personality God, is in everything. His energy is everywhere. If he's whole, then everything from him is whole. And we mustn't forget that. And this is what we're being reminded of. We serve with gratitude for the opportunity and not with a grudging attitude that can affect the atmosphere, at least as much as our good deeds, canceling out their benefits. Service is ongoing, reciprocal relationship between people, whereas helping incurs debt, as in, I've helped you, now you owe me. When we help someone, they owe us one. On the other hand, serving brings healing because it is mutual and there's no debt to repay. Ooh, how about that? That's a mouthful. What a perspective. What a way if I can imbibe this and follow this and practice this. What it'll do for all our consciousness and for those we're interacting with. Because we are all whole. We are all part and parcel of the whole. And if we just look at that outward body and think, well, poor thing, let me help, what is that saying? Whereas they're really equal, and that's how that outward body looks. So I'm going to stop there because I feel my cup runneth over. I feel I've gotten something here myself to work with, to endeavor to be vigilant and mindful and alert each day as I offer myself to help. Bhaktitirtha Swami has written in my many books, study this, do this, to help others. But that help now is on, I feel, a different level. Okay, are there any questions or comments on what you've heard tonight from Chapter 9, Guidelines? These are guidelines for responsible action. This is taking us a little higher at Spiritual Warriors.
There are any questions or comments? There's a lot of just repeating and reflecting on what you're reading.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, who's repeating and reflecting?
Bhuvan Mohan and Bhaktin Carol.
Okay. No comments.
No, there's Edgar is there and he says thank you so much.
Hi, Edgar, welcome. Okay, I'm glad you're there. And who else?
Bhuvan Mohan, Shruti.
Shruti, hi, welcome. Glad to hear from you. You're there.
Karuna Shakti and Bhaktin Carol.
Okay, Karuna Shakti. Okay, as I said, this has really given me a lot to think about. And I hope you've gotten some of the points of understanding, helping, and serving, and fixing. I know I'm going to study that, as I said. And it's about serving others. And the next week we'll start on the humility of service. But this week will give us an opportunity to really endeavor. And I'm quite happy I was guided to this chapter. So if there are no further comments or any questions,
there is a comment. I was helping someone who was very sick on drug use, but with understanding that I was helping someone dear to the Lord. I was told to help serve the body of devotee was good. Helping serving the body of a devotee was good.
Yeah. What were we saying? What the motive is? As I said, he's putting this out, and we, knowing who we are, where we are, what we're doing, is to make us see how we're feeling, because you're helping the body. I don't quite know what you mean. You were in association with the person to try and help them be stronger or something. But again, what he's saying is, it makes us feel, as he's saying, that in helping we're on a superior level, and that this person, how does he put it? When we help someone, we're using our own power to rescue those who are apparently of lesser strength. And that could be natural. I mean, if it's a drug addict and they're laying out and suffering, we would think, well, I'm better than him. You may not say it in the subject, but what he's saying is all the while, and then we're accepting their frailties from our supposedly superior vantage point. So this is what he's trying to tell us. Look at our consciousness, and in place of I'm helping this person, I'm serving a God family member, if you will, someone of that I'm equal with, because all souls are equal creations of God. So there's nothing wrong with helping. As I said, we've all been doing it. I call myself always helping. I'm helping. Oh, I help this person, and this person calling out. But what's happening to me, and as I said, it's where you are in consciousness, what you're desiring for your spiritual life, that he's giving these guidelines. And this is why sometimes when I finish reading, all I do, I may call a God system, all I can say is, Gurudev is deep, and he gives us at such a depth. So if we're ready to receive, we receive. But it's giving us something to think about. And be mindful of what's the exchanges. You see, as we said earlier, we need to be mindful constantly of what we're thinking, what our words are, what our actions are, to reach this level of higher consciousness and to move towards the ultimate goal of life and to reach that stage of love that he's constantly talking about. So that's fine, helping. But now, as I said, for me, reading this, studying this, it's put a different framework in my mind for helping, and makes me want to be more serving, and then getting myself out the way. That's where I am right now. I can't tell you how. Just reading this and wanting to study this and praying that I can accept this and understand the difference between serving and helping. And as he said to us, serving, helping, and fixing, it has a certain connotation. Does that help? Who asked the question? I got carried away.
Bhakti and Carol asked the question.
Bhakti and Carol, did that help, dear? You know, it's like you see me perked up and waiting for you to answer me back so I can hear you. But did that help at all? And do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, thank you.
You got it? Okay. Just, I hope you're making notes or somehow to remember, because some of this is really has to be repeated or read again or thought about again to open ourselves to function at that level. And to me, it's possible. We just have to be made aware of it and then have the desire to act in that way. And the Lord fulfills our desires. So it's just to go another step higher. Any other comment or question?
Bhuvan Mohan and Bhakti and Shruti feel that they've been overly self-involved lately.
Okay. Self-involved means paying attention to yourself more than to others. And if that's so, then you need to examine and look at that. Why? Are there others outside that now you can look at helping and what it means to you? Because he says here, service is an ongoing reciprocal relationship between people, whereas helping incurs debt. As in, I've helped you, now you owe me. So I'm not quite sure what that means, but it sounds like we may have to get ourselves out the way to see how we can serve others and what their needs really are, because ours aren't maybe that important. Yes.
Can you talk about or make some comment about how we can sometimes feel guilty for taking care of ourselves?
How we can what?
Sometimes feel guilty for taking care of ourselves. Like sometimes we can go to the extreme of being so overly concerned and available for others, but when it comes to ourselves, we kind of neglect ourselves to the point where, later down the road, we can't be as available as we used to be for others because we're forced to take care of our own needs.
Well, first of all, I think he told us here God created that we're all equal, but we have to know that we're in a human body. The soul is in that body. The Lord is in that body. And the body is a vehicle to do the service and the work that the soul came to do. And the Lord is there to guide us. And so as a vehicle, as you have a vehicle, you have a car. You're not that car, but you get in that car to go. You take care of it. You change the oil, you check the air in the tires. You put water in the tank if you need, or coolant or something like that. So too with this human body, it must be taken care of so that that soul activity, we're going to get more into action in this, because he talks about responsible action. But then you're really, to a degree, saying to the Lord, I don't care about this body you gave me. I'm not going to take care of it. And it's not so realistic, caring for others and ignoring what you've been given to function in. There has to be a balance. And if you were with us in this last chapter, he has a whole section on health and healing. And he says spiritual warriors must be attentive to the issues of health and healing without giving undue emphasis to the importance of the body. We must still love and care for this instrument of service so that it can be of use to others. So we must take care of it. It's to say, oh, I didn't have time to, I had this pain and it went on, or whatever, I had gas and I didn't take any, because I was taking care. No. Because if that overcomes you, you can't take care of anybody. And then you won't be able to continue taking care of anybody or even yourself. So we must still love and care for this instrument of service. I like the way he puts that. So that it can be of use. Okay? Is that okay?
That's a question. How you just read about service being reciprocal. So Bhakti Carol's asking, how is it reciprocal when I was bringing prasadam to an addict? Is it reciprocal with that person, or reciprocal that I am taken care of also?
Well, first of all, if you're taking prasadam, offered food, spiritual food, to anyone, the Lord is pleased. And when he is pleased, he reciprocates in his way by his sweet will. You don't look, well, oh, I'm doing this. It's just like, I've helped you, now you owe me. You see God, I'm giving him some food. No. It has to come from a selfless place. Giving and sharing prasadam is a very important aspect of our lives as we are understanding the importance of offering our food to the Lord, not eating it without offering it to him, and then giving that to someone else. That's a very important job. So the reciprocation will come from on high. The person may say thank you, and how well, they may even offer you money to buy boga to do it again, and that's some reciprocation. But we're talking on the higher level. So it's serving. That's why even if you understand what he's saying about service and helping, the helping is seeing when we help someone, we're using our own power to rescue those who are apparently lesser strength, all the while accepting their frailties from our supposedly superior vantage point. Now that struck me. That's why I said I'm going to be studying this. I'm going to be mindful of this in my exchanges with others. But Carol, dear Carol, you're getting, as you give from your heart, as you give to another living entity, knowing that they're part and parcel of the Lord, just as you are part and parcel of the the Lord is then pleased. And in his own sweet way, sweet will, he will reciprocate. We can't plan how or what way, but just that we are thankful that we were able to serve another living entity. Is that helpful, Carol?
That's what she said she felt.
Okay.
Very grateful.
Okay. Good. Good. Okay. Any other? Okay. It's good night time for tonight. I thank you all for being there. I thank you for hearing and hopefully receiving something that can help you in your spiritual life and move on. And please take note of any shifts in consciousness, if you will, and maybe share them with us next week. All right? Do have a wonderful week. Krishna bless you all. Hare Krishna. Good night.